This is House Planning Help, episode 41. Hello, I'm Ben Adam Smith, and this is the podcast for you if you're looking to build or renovate a house, but you want to make the best job possible. I'm exploring what houses we should be building in the 21st century. My own goal is to be inside an energy-efficient home before I turn 40 in August 2016. And today, can you hear that? I'm on my own, no guest whatsoever, but I want to talk to you about 5 fundamentals to creating a better house. Why am I doing this? Well, you might remember a while ago I said I was going to create an ebook, and I was really keen to look back into the archive, firstly to go through some of that material again, but also to reconstruct it in a more logical sequence. So it's what I've been working on for a little while, and here at House Planning Help, my idea behind this was that I learned from 2 groups of people, those who work in the construction industry and have a lot of experience, and the people who've had to learn as they go along and have created their own homes, the clients, I suppose you could say, who have been there and done it. So this whole way along, I've been learning from those 2 sets of people, and that's why I wanted to put some of that information, because it's come in a pretty random sequence, if I'm totally honest, because of the way that I've been learning. I've just been focusing on what I find interesting or where I feel I should go. But now, after putting that all into a mind map, the information that I feel I've learned, and then thinking, what are the common themes? I keep hearing these same messages. How could that help? And another aspect of this is that I came across the Snippet app, which I feel is quite a modern way of presenting a multimedia presentation, in that it includes video, audio, you can have text, and it's just a good way to bring it all together. I really enjoyed reading a few books on that format, so you can download it for your iPad or for your iPhone. So that's what I decided to do on this platform. I was going to give it a go as a learning experience as well. And I sometimes feel that on this journey, I am the apprentice, that I'm constantly learning what I should be doing and hearing from different people and trying to take it all on board. And I hope that I continue learning for many years to come. I wouldn't want it to stop. So that's where I'm at, that I've put this ebook together, and I want to tell you a little bit about it today. This is almost a preview of what you can expect from this ebook, and I've put that into the form of 5 fundamentals to creating a better house. This is my information, or what I feel is most important. You may disagree. I totally understand if you do. But I've put it into why most people don't build energy efficient homes. That is the title of my ebook. And taking a look at the front cover, have you ever seen thermal imaging pictures where they look at a house that's energy efficient and you can see that the heat, if it's in a colder climate, is not escaping? And I think that one of the best demonstrations of this is to a retrofitted project. So whereas you might be on your bespoke project on a plot of land, not next door to any others, I was quite keen to use this image on the front cover, showing that in a row of houses, how much of the heat is being let out of most of them compared to the one that's been made energy efficient. And that always draws my eye. So the front cover of this, it shows most of the houses in yellow, this yellow format, and then the one that's keeping the heat in is in blue. But of course it could be the reverse if you're in a hot climate and you're trying to keep the heat out of your building. That might also be a way of doing it. But that's what's on the cover, so hopefully that will draw your attention to why is this one building different. So the 5 points that I want to cover today: mindset, so that you keep an open mind; scale, not too big; also looking at optimizing; fabric first; and simplicity. So let's dive straight into this. The first one being mindset. You probably don't imagine that this would be anything on any other house building website. Why would you be interested in mindset? And through my research, I actually feel that it's a fundamental, that you're going to come with baggage. You've lived in houses before, you know what a house is, you probably think you know what you want from your next house, and you've got all these grand ideas. But I'd actually challenge you to say, whoa, stop for a second, enjoy the research phase of building a house, because it's fantastic just to, you don't have to have any opinions in this early part of thinking what house you're going to build. You can just see what other people have done, why they've done it, how housing has evolved, and I've certainly found myself more and more interested in that history as it's gone along. So keeping an open mind, I feel, will allow you not to be prescriptive, because that's dangerous, isn't it? When you just say, this is the house I want. Now, can we make it eco? How do we do that? Can we do that afterwards? And invariably what you end up doing is bolting on technology to try and even things up, which of course is not good. And I also feel that few people make it a priority to build an energy efficient home. It often comes down the list, and if you really want this, along with it being a low impact building, we had that episode where how sustainable is it? You're probably limiting the damage, but if you really want to do your best, it's got to be right up there in the priorities. I know in the grander scheme of things there will always be other interests. You'll be thinking about schools in the area or where will be a good place to live, but I think you've got to have energy efficiency as a priority right up at the top. And I think this will pay dividends as you move through deciding what you're going to build. So that's my first point. Mindset, keep an open mind, just put aside some research time and just don't think too hard about it. Just try and absorb what others are saying. Secondly, scale. And not too big. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? I'm sure you're aware that size matters, but really, have you thought about how much it matters? I think even in the very first episode, we talked about how if you want to bring the budget back, you're talking about the only way you can really do that is make a smaller house. So know that for every bit you add, it's not just in one area, you're adding it in lots of areas. So increasing the floor area means that the other costs increase too. Larger houses have larger build costs, larger running costs, and larger maintenance costs. So these are all going up at the same time. And when you look at the life cycle of the building, yeah, it's significant, isn't it? So I would say, if you can, spend time really considering how you can get more from less. And the one example that always pops up in my mind is when I chatted to Sarah Suzanka, who runs a great website. She's published lots of books as well. I think she's doing a fantastic job. But just that idea of double duty, of using all the space in your house and then thinking, well, hold on, when I'm in my office or I only use the computer for a short amount of time, do I really need a whole separate room? Could this be part of a guest room where you can hide the different functions? And so it just, to me, illustrates that there are all sorts of other ways of thinking about space. How can we be clever with space so that ultimately we are using as much space in our homes every single day? The other thing about scale is, to a certain degree, it is down to personal preference. What one person thinks is small, another person will think is huge. And I like the idea of reflecting on the tiny homes movement. I know I haven't done a podcast on this, but I really want to in the future, because I'd love to see, if you live in this tiny home, and you've probably seen pictures of what we're talking about here, does your quality of life just go into oblivion? Is life not worth living? And I would probably say the reverse is true, that these people realise that it's not the material aspect of a home that's important. It might actually mean that you get out and do more things if you're in this smaller house. So if I focus on that for an episode, it just puts it all into perspective as to what is important in life. And so that's why I'd say try and keep your ambition under control. I know that this is going to be fulfilling your dreams, so an exciting time, and I'm not trying to say don't make an exciting time, but just think about the space that you really need. Can you get more from less? And I'm sure we're going to see that phrase popping up again and again and again. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is optimize, and do this for as much as you can. This is not an exhaustive list, it's just what I've put together here, but I always think it's such a crying shame that probably a lot of houses that the volume house builders are putting together are optimized for their wallets. How much money can we make from these? So it's cheap as chips, put it up and then flog it off. And I always think, we can't be doing that. We can't keep on this way in this day and age. We've got to get smarter, and optimizing this is just common sense. So the ultimate aim, we mentioned getting more from less, the ultimate aim is to get the most from the least amount of resources while minimizing waste. And I know that from doing this podcast, I've suddenly begun to realize that the houses, okay, they're important, but if you start running an energy efficient house in a cavalier way, then you might end up, or perhaps you jet off across the globe a number of times a year with all the money you're saving. It's got to fit in, hasn't it, this whole picture, and we've got to work that out. But we are focusing on houses here. So I would say this is perhaps not, again, something that you think about when building a house, but where you build it is important. If you can choose a location where you don't need to use your car as much, I feel that it's almost a double benefit. You're really going to be helping the planet. And I know from my own situation, which I didn't appreciate how good it was, being in the middle of this town, that I run a lot of my business through the internet, so I don't have to drive that far unless I'm going out on a video shoot, or I can walk into the centre of town in 10 minutes. I've got facilities. The pubs are a minute away from where this is a walk across the road. I can go to the gym or the DIY centre. That's about 3 minutes. My supermarket is just over 5 minutes away. So the location is brilliant. It's a really clever location. The downside is if I were building this new, I probably couldn't get this sort of location. But maybe you're considering a retrofit, then that might be something to bear in mind. How can I get out and walk a lot? And we as a household have ditched one of our cars because we're just not using it. There may be the possibility that we need to get another car in the future, but for now it's working. So that's the location of the plot. Also, this one's critical, that we have this opportunity, the free source of light and heat from the sun. So take advantage, orientate the house to benefit from this. And that also goes for when your professionals are looking after this. If they're not using the Passive House planning package, which again, here's another topic that I know I need to cover just to understand, but this is how they test buildings before they're even built and try different variations to make sure that it is about choosing that best design and knowing what the consequences are for future comfort and energy bills. Not finding out the hard way, but doing it, modelling it on computer beforehand. And so tools can help us optimise for our houses too. So I'm up for that. There are probably other tools that I don't even know exist, and maybe I'll find out further down the line of this process. But that's definitely, this is a big one to underline, that you need to be orientating the house to benefit from sunlight and building the design accordingly. Other points I've got on here, again, these are pretty obvious, but creating a dwelling that's aesthetically pleasing. We don't want to go all out energy efficiency and then realise, God, this looks ugly, doesn't it? Because sometimes it can. It's down to personal preference, I know that. And then I've put this on here about personalising your house, because we perhaps can miss it if we're focusing 100% on making energy efficiency the priority, that this has to work for us as well. That is the whole point of going down this path and making a house as good as we possibly can. So optimise. I'm sure you can add other points onto that too, but those are just a few. So that's point number 3. Looking at the 4th point, I've got fabric first. If you've been researching what to do for your house, this will have popped up, this phrase, because it's not good to be bolting on the technology as your first step and trying to neutralise your carbon footprint. What about if we did it another way around and tried to build a really good quality building fabric that is largely going to last for the lifetime of the building, and it's going to do a lot of the hard work as well. So if we invest in bolt-on technologies, perhaps the lifespan will be 15 years, 20 years if we're lucky, but then it's going to break down and we'll have to start thinking what we can do again. So definitely it's about reducing that energy demand first. And the factors that are important, again, you'll probably know these, won't you? Air tightness right up there at number 1, and high levels of insulation. 2 really critical factors that when it comes to keeping heat in if you're in that colder climate, or heat out if you're in that hot climate, then this is what we've got to be thinking about for our houses. And I would encourage everyone, if you're listening to this podcast, you will have done your own research or picked bits and pieces up as we've gone along, but to learn about the Passive House Standard. It brings this all together, it sets various criteria, and I think that it does so much more than many other ways of construction. It's just rigorous, and it may not be perfect, but it does a lot of things very well. So do your own research, come to your own conclusions there, but the Passive House Standard we think is certainly worth checking out. And finally on this list, again, we've got more in the ebook, but simplicity. And it was a great moment to understand how all this comes together, that if you really are, for example, we've mentioned the Passive House Standard, if you wanted to go to that level, you can do that on a standard budget. But it's back to your mindset. You've got to spend your money wisely, and you've got to make energy efficiency the priority. So what that would mean is that you've got to look at it as, what are the non-negotiable parts of this? If I want to create a Passive House Standard house, how would I go about it? And so you know that it's about the insulation and getting that building fabric right, the triple glazed windows, then having a mechanical ventilation system with heat recovery and all the other things that it includes. But you can account for that up front and almost work backwards. And probably what that will mean is that the money that you need to design or specify your house is going to be a smaller pot than if you've just gone, right, I want to build a star-shaped house and it's going to be this and that. You probably won't be able to go to that level of complexity, and you'll have to come back to a simpler form with simpler detailing, and that will keep the costs down. But overall, it means that it is within reach if you can find the elegance in that simplicity. Sometimes it's tough because you bring all these things together and it gets more complicated for a while, but if you can come out the other side and then simplify it back, then you may be talking about a building that works far better, just constantly refining, than it ever would have done if you'd just not put that work in. And I would say that your toughest mission here, particularly talking to you if you're new into this and want to create an energy efficient house, is finding the construction professionals that work like this, because I think I'm right in saying this, that they're a small group at the moment. Hopefully more people will cotton on to this, but those are 5 points that I would say will really help you, some fundamentals of creating a better house. And I'll recap my list. It's just my list. I'm putting my hands up here, but it's using information that I have learnt over the course of house planning help and trying to work out what are the key messages, those things that I really, really think would help, and trying to put that into this podcast and the ebook that I will talk about in a moment. So this list. Number 1, mindset. Keep an open mind when you're doing that research and enjoy it. Number 2, scale. Bigger doesn't mean better. Can you do more with less? Number 3, optimize for as many different elements as you can possibly think of. Point 4, fabric first. Avoid that eco bling. Well, certainly up front, try and bring down the amount of energy that you'll need on your project. Invest in that fabric. And number 5, simplicity. Simplicity rules. It really does. Embrace eco-minimalism if you can. So I haven't gone into a massive amount of detail here, and that's why I've put this ebook together. I'm not even really sure that we can call it an ebook because it's on the Snippet app, and that is this new way of doing things. And so it is something that you will get for your iPad or your iPhone, where you can just swipe through, you read a bit of text, you watch a video, then you listen to a piece of audio. There might be a bit to get interactive. So that's the format. And I was very keen to use this because I thought it helped for learning. And so it might make things easier. But in this ebook, I go into more detail on those concepts that I've outlined. I also look at natural materials, retrofitting, and have some tips for project success. We have some photos of completed Passive House Standard projects. I'm eternally grateful to all of the different companies and individuals that have allowed me to use their photos, so I credit them in the book as well. And I use the videos to try and illustrate the craziness of some of the themes of the energy that we're wasting. And in one of the videos you get to see where I grew up, a place that is very, very special to me, my childhood home that grew up, actually. It was a tiny little cottage and it grew with our family. Unfortunately, I haven't told the whole story of that. Maybe that's something to go back to another time, but you see where I live and how I was influenced. And this goes back to the mindset issue of just being able to broaden your outlook. In case you're wondering, is this ebook flawed in any way because I'm writing it. I'm a novice. I'm still learning. Yes, I put my hands up. I know that that is the case, but I've tried to prevent that from happening. And how I've done that, L. Ron Burrell, my good friend, he's an architect that you may know if you're on social media because he has a high presence on there. He's also a prominent advocate of the Passive House standard, and he's worked with me on this project in a personal capacity, but he's also an associate for Archetype, who are a company that I absolutely love. But he's been great. He's allowed me to say the sorts of things that I want to say, but pull me back every time I start talking nonsense or don't quite make sense. So I'm very, very happy that he has helped me on this project. He's got his own blog that he's releasing later this year, and I'm going to get behind that as much as I can and help him out. So thank you, Elrond. But why should you buy this ebook? Well, it's aimed at you specifically if you're coming into this journey trying to suss out what would be the best energy efficient home. So that's the information in here. Some of it you've probably heard before, but it's designed from my viewpoint. I'm assuming you've got a similar viewpoint too. Maybe the objectives are the same and you found the blogs that we've produced, the videos, the podcasts, all have helped you. So that's what this book aims to do, and to put it all into a more logical sequence, and it'll be a better way to learn. So it may be reaffirming some of the things that you already know, but that's no bad thing. I really enjoyed looking back at that first year of interviews, and some of it I'd already forgotten. So I think for me particularly, my memory's not good. It's just great to be able to go back into that archive. And then it will highlight some of the decisions that have monetary and also environmental consequences to just help you to focus, because you can gloss over these issues, but if you spend some time on it, you probably could spend a lot of money or waste a lot of money on that. But if you actually think about this and what you really need, it could help you. So that is the ebook. I think it's exceptional value. Of course, I would say that as the author, but that's because it's only going to cost a couple of dollars. My final reason would be, perhaps for those of you who are listening who are part of the construction industry and you know all of this, it's second nature to you, but I would love you just to help me out by buying a copy of this book. Firstly, because I think you'll find it's interesting. It's maybe a new format that you're on, but also to support me in what I'm doing. I've got all sorts of ideas that I want to try and make happen over the next few years. I know the sorts of things that I want to do, and it's just a matter of financing them and making it happen. So this ebook, it's information products, is a way to try and generate an income to have that money to be able to invest back in what I'm doing at House Planning Help. So please, I don't ask much, but I'd love you to buy a copy of this right now. What do you have to do? Well, the easiest thing to do is, if you've got an iPad, search for the Snippet app in the App Store. That's the hard work. The Snippet app, SNIPPET. Search for that, install that on your iPad, iPhone, and then you'll probably see the cover of the book very quickly because it's quite noticeable. It will be one, I would imagine, of the few books in there on housing, and it's called Why Most People Don't Build Energy Efficient Homes. And then you can read it, and I'd love your feedback as well. That would be superb. Hopefully this is not the last time I will publish something, and I just enjoyed this process. I think there's so much more we can do. There will be a Kindle version that's available in the future, but I did this on the Snippet app and I think it works best on there. So I would much rather, if you do have an iPad, that you look at it on there. The Kindle way is really just for an audience that don't have an iPad or an iPhone or anywhere to download it there. So more information at houseplanninghelp.com/41. And my call to action is grab a copy of the book. Help me out here. Let's look ahead to the next session. We're back with our interviews, and Fran Bradshaw from Anne Thorne Architects is my guest. We have a case study of her very own straw bale passive house.